All right, so go ahead, and if you haven't yet, go ahead and mute yourself now, and then if you need to, you can put something in the chat, and then Jenny can speak up for you if she feels like the session needs to be interrupted for that, but otherwise we'll save questions and comments and stuff towards the end. So first of all, before we really get into the meaty content of things, I just want to affirm you, and this is something that I tell myself often, is that I'm designed with everything that I need to be an effective parent for my child or children. And so I just want to encourage you with that same thing, that sometimes we feel like if we were somebody else, or if we just could do this better, or if we just had this ability, then or maybe we're missing something and that's why we're failing, or we feel like we're failing. But really, you are designed by God with everything that you need to be able to effectively parent the children that you either birth or that are in your life, and that you're raising or have some kind of impact on. So the other thing that's really nice to know is that children are resilient. So even if you have made a decade of what you would consider mistakes with your child, there's a lot of ability, because when I say that their minds are plastic, that means that they have the ability to bounce back and be reshaped and shifted. And so that is to our advantage. So even if we have lots and lots and lots of errors, and we're just now maybe even coming to terms with kind of who we are as who we want to be as parents and wanting to make those changes, it's not too late. And so just I want that to be an encouragement to you, and just have grace for yourself and for your kids, especially under these unique circumstances, because there are stressors that are unusual, that everybody is going through. So really, you are doing just fine. And so as we get started, I do have another poll for you guys, and it's just, how has shelter in place been for you as a parent or as a family? So has this time been, and again, you can select as many as you want, has it been exhausting or restful? And maybe it's been exhausting and restful. Has it been fun, overwhelming, full of anxiety, confusing? Maybe it's been frustrating, or you felt lonely, or maybe it's even been enlightening. Maybe you're figuring out things about yourself, your interests, your passions, your dreams that you never knew before. Okay, it looks like everybody has voted. So I'm going to go ahead and share these results with you. And hopefully this brings you some comfort too. So you can see that the #1 response was overwhelming, and frustrating was right behind it with #2. So I hope that this is encouraging too for you to know that you're not alone in that, that a lot of other moms, in fact, every mom is feeling the things that you're feeling. So overwhelmed is very natural for you to feel right now, full of anxiety, frustrated, lonely, exhausted. But then at the same time, there is some parts that are restful about it. There maybe are parts that are fun for you. And I like that some people have experienced a sense of enlightening, meaning that you're coming to kind of a new realization of who you are and who you're meant to be. So I wanted to start with this, because I know I tend to get into like the meat and potatoes and stuff, and want to get into like just sharing all the tips that I feel like would be really helpful. But I felt like I saw this on social media the other day on one of my friends' accounts, and I just thought, this is so perfect, because we talk a lot about sticker charts for our kids and chore charts and all of that, but this is a parent's chart. And I really could stand behind all of these things, no matter how old your kid is. But did you hug your kid for no reason? Give yourself a star for that. Did you help your kid clean their room, or help them with something that they needed help with? Did you take a calming breath before speaking? Did you play games or just have fun with your family? Apologize when you got upset. Show grace to your kid when they got upset. Did something silly just to make your family laugh, and then did something just for you, because when you're not as calm, then neither are your kids. And so this is just kind of, I wanted to start with that, just so that you would know that this is important. And so kind of going along with that, I thought I'd start with just the parent-child relationship, and kind of what are some key things that could be helpful to remember to improve that parent-child relationship. If you feel like there's a strain or a stress on it, or you feel like I'm always yelling at my kids, or how do I make sure that they are that they feel cared for by me? And so these are some of the things that I feel like lay that foundation really well. And so the first is consistency and routines, and those kind of go hand in hand. So the more consistent we can be, the more routines that we have in place, it gives a sense of stability and well-being for the kids that we are taking care of. I'm gonna mute. Somebody's kind of loud. I don't know who. Okay. So just bring some stability, and the more safe people feel, or the more safe that our kids feel, the more healthy their development tends to be. And so the more consistent we can be within our daily routine, the more beneficial that's going to be for our kids too. We also wanted to make sure that we are giving our families a safe place to learn and develop, and especially to make mistakes. And really that comes down to a lot of our intention with building relationships, with making sure that we're also modeling a lot of that inner dialogue for ourselves is healthy, and that we're modeling a healthy dialogue to our kids as well. So if I make a mistake, I'm gonna say, oh no, I made a mistake, that's frustrating to me, but I know that everybody makes mistakes and we can move on. And so obviously this developmentally, that changes how you're gonna process those events. At a younger level, you're just gonna be modeling some of those coping skills, and maybe even acknowledging you made a mistake, but it's okay. As your children get older, you're going to have more meaningful, hopefully open and deeper discussions about what it's like to make mistakes, how those mistakes may impact you, but how we can learn from them and be able to use them in a positive way. The next one I wanted to touch on was just affirmation, but beyond just how the behavior impacts you as the parent. And that's a fancy way of me saying that you don't just want to talk about behavior when it bugs you or when you're happy with it. And I think that that's kind of the default, is that, oh wow, I really like the way you did that, that makes me happy, is I want to, that feels good, I want to share that with you. Or it's, I don't like what you're doing, you're driving me crazy, how many more times do I have to tell you this? And so we're really talking about behavior really in polarities. Either I like what you're doing, or I don't like what you're doing. And if all of our affirmation is really just based on how a kid's behaving and their actions and how that impacts me as the grown-up, then we're really missing out on a big part of shaping that sense of self-esteem of our kids. And so it's really finding time to affirm different parts of their character, different parts of who they are, unique in the world, trying to help them see their purpose and their value beyond just how they're affecting your life, your efficiency, your ability to get things done, your own sanity, but just who are they, and really making sure that we are affirming those things beyond just the behavior part. Unified expectations, and this is a tricky one. So when I talk about unified expectations, it means that everybody in the household that's responsible for raising that individual is on the same page, and that is ideal. It's not always attainable. And so I know that even like in my relationship with James, there have been like definite ups and downs and seasons where he and I are not seeing eye to eye on things, and that does transfer to the sense of safety and security that that kids feel. And so if you have difficulty being unified with your partner in how you are raising your kids, then I would really, especially in the context of what we're talking about, I'd really pray about that and really ask God to help reveal things to you and also to your partner's heart to be able to be a team and to be equally yoked in that, and have the responsibility that you take and the lens that you take. And it's never going to be that you see things exactly the same, and that's part of the beauty of co-parenting, but as much as possible with those key values we want to make sure that we're unified, because again, it comes back to that consistency. And the more consistent we are, the safer our kids feel, and the safer they feel, the more open they are, the more willing they are to include us, and to have that dialogue that really helps us to be able to shape the kind of person that we hope that they will be. And then the last one is healthy boundaries, which also kind of goes along with self-care. But and a lot of positive parenting, it almost, to me, feels like we need to just give our kids everything, like every ounce of me goes to you, and you are my #1 priority, and you're the only thing that matters, and you know, I put myself aside to make sure that you feel supported. And that's actually not healthy parenting. So it's actually really healthy to say, oh, this is my time to be able to do this right now. When I'm done, or when the timer goes off, or however you need to be able to translate that to your child, then I'll be able to give you my attention, or then we'll be able to do, you know, what you were asking us to do. And so self-care is really important, and we'll go into that a little bit more, and we already kind of touched on it with that graphic on the last slide. But the more that we take care of ourselves, the more in control of our emotions we'll be. And the more in control of our emotions we are, the more in control of emotions our kids tend to be. So some basics. I actually teach a course called it's like a nonviolent crisis intervention, and it's for our kids that have severe behaviors. And one of the foundational things that we talk about is called the integrated experience. And I'm just saying also known as when things go from bad to worse. So it's kind of this cycle that if I'm out of control, or I don't respond in the best way, then it tends to make my child escalate. And then when my child escalates, then it makes me escalate. And then when I do that, and it's just this negative spiral. So you might find yourself, you know, at the end of a session with your kid just being like, what happened? How did I get here? And you can tell because maybe your heart is racing, or you're sweaty, or your fists are clenched, or your thought process is spiraling or feeling more negative. And so really it's helpful to know that our behavior impacts their behavior and vice versa. But because we're the adult, we kind of are expected to be in more control. And when we notice that cycle happening, that we really are intentional about stopping ourselves from progressing it on and instead reversing it. So if I know that my behavior affects the other person, then what can I do to positively affect that cycle rather than making it deteriorate and continuing down in this like negative path. And so we do need to make sure that we as the adults are in emotional control and monitoring our tone and body language. And your kids know this. And so they are a lot of the time looking at not even what you're saying, but how you're saying what you're saying. And so there's even times where, you know, Stella is my daughter, she's 5 years old. And just the other night, she dumped water all over the floor out of the bathtub. And you know, I told her, I'm like, then you're done with this little bucket and you can't play with that anymore. And she was so upset. I'm so sorry, Mommy. I'm so sorry. I'll never do it again. And I was like, okay. And she's like, I am so sorry. And I was like, I accept your apology. And she was like, but when are you going to smile at me again? And so they are feeding off of our expressions to be able to know to gauge where they're at. And so we want to make sure that we are under that emotional control, that we're monitoring the tone that we're using, we're monitoring our body language, and that it's all sending an intentional message. So I kind of think about it like with customer service when you call in, and the way that somebody addresses your concern can either make you more frustrated after that phone call, or feel really affirmed and validated and at peace, and actually even more pleased with the company you're dealing with, even if they made the mistake in the first place. So just kind of be thinking about that. And a lot of that has to do with tone and nonverbals. So take regular inventory of your emotions, evaluate what your triggers are. Because if I know that every time my kid says no to me, that to me is a huge trigger. And I'm not saying that personally, but that may be a trigger for you. And so if I know what my triggers are, then I can be thinking about the next time that that button gets pushed for me, I have a plan that I feel comfortable with, that makes me feel like I'm in control of myself and my reaction. And always be thinking about that plan when you're in a calm state, right? So that's not helpful when you're at the peak of frustration. You're like, oh, the next time I get triggered like this, I'm gonna, like, that's not helpful. So as you come back to a calm state, try thinking about and just kind of logically going through what happened, where did I get triggered, what was it specifically, and what can I do next time? Maybe it is just taking a deep breath, or maybe it is tagging your spouse and saying, mommy's going to take a break and go to the bathroom, daddy's going to talk to you about this. But figure out a plan and try involving others. So sometimes we get stuck in our own experience to where we can't even see the easy option. It's like not seeing the forest through the trees. And so sometimes involving friends, mentors, your spouse, your parents, can all be ways to be able to help develop what that plan is, so that you can choose a different path for yourself in the future. And then deep breaths, brief pause, taking a break, they're all essential. And so sometimes I think as parents, we feel like we need to always know what the consequence is going to be or how to respond. But if we're emotional, in that interaction, then it's usually the response that we want to give right away is going to be more triggered by our emotion and not our thought. And so we want to be as effective as possible. And so taking a deep breath, pausing, taking a break yourself, or having your child take a break is really effective in responding. And so some of the times when I do talks with teachers and stuff about changing kid behavior, they really get excited about, they think that I'm going to basically give them some magic wand that they are just going to be able to wave around and their kid's going to be good in their class. And I'll say, just so you know, we're not even talking about changing your kid's behavior. We're really changing adult behavior that hopefully changes kid behavior. So just keep that in mind. Your kids are the ones that are learning from you and kind of at the mercy of a lot of your skills. And so we want to make sure that we're thinking about that first, that I need to make sure that I'm changing me and in control of me if I want to see a difference in my kids. So I'll get into my my tips, and I was trying to condense this to the most concise and meaningful, helpful list. These are the things that I do on a regular basis, either with my own children or the challenging kids that I work with in the school setting, that I feel like give you the most bang for your buck. So the first one is front loading positively stated expectations. So this means before you even get into a situation, you're telling your kid what you want to see them do or how you want them to behave. So this could be before you go into the grocery store. Hey, when we go into the grocery store, I want you to stay with me. Okay, we're not going to wander through the aisles. I want you to stay right next to me. If you find something that you think mom should put in the cart, this is how you ask me. And so we're really kind of outlining what this whole experience should look like in a positively stated way. And so again, it's not I don't want you running away from me. I don't want you talking back to me. And don't you even think about putting things in the cart because I don't have money to pay for all of your stuff that you want, right? So just framing it in a positive way really takes out the guesswork for the kid of knowing, what do you want me to do? What do you not want me to do? It's kind of like saying, I want you to come in after school, right? Let's come into the house. I want you to take your shoes off. I want you to hang your backpack up and give me any papers that you need me to sign. Is much better than saying, hey, when we get inside, don't just throw your backpack on the ground. Okay, well, what should they do with their backpack? So we always want to make sure that we're positively stating the expectation because it really takes out the room for error and it sets them up for success. And that kind of goes with the pre-correction part, but that's really, pre-correction looks at what are the errors that your kid typically makes in that situation and how do we correct that before we get in that situation so that they can have the tools needed to be successful. So if, for example, if going out to eat at a restaurant is always difficult because maybe your kid throws food on the ground or maybe they're always on their phone, we want to make sure that we say, hey, when you get in this situation, you will probably want to pull out your phone, and I know that you're going to want to check your text messages, but this is time for us to be as a family. So I'm going to put my phone away too, and that's hard for me as well, but we're going to put our phones away and we're going to be together as a family. Or, okay, I know that it's time to clean up. when it's time to clean up, you tend to get really upset and frustrated and want to throw your toys. This time I want you can say I'm frustrated, but we're not gonna throw our toys. We're gonna be respectful with our toys. So it's just correcting the behavior before it even happens to eliminate the chance of that that inappropriate behavior, the behavior that we don't like, or maybe that embarrassing in public behavior doesn't happen as often. Looking for the good. It seems obvious, but it's actually not. So looking for the good takes intentional practice. I'm a naturally positive, encouraging person, and sometimes I notice myself getting hung up on the stop doing this, don't touch that, put that back, like that kind of almost nagging, like how many times do I have to repeat myself? I want to bang my head into a wall. I remember, and some of you may have heard this story, but I was in Target with my kids, and Stella kept wanting to touch everything. And I kept saying, like, I was going to that place where I was wanting to say, if you touch one more thing, then consequences happening. And I caught myself like, what would I tell myself in this situation if I were on the outside? And I would say this, why don't we reframe that and say, I want you to show me self-control. So I'm going to be looking for all the ways that you have your hands to yourself. And especially when we go through the aisles that have toys or movies or books, like if I see that your hands are to yourself and you're not touching anything, I'm going to be so impressed, and I'm going to notice that you have self-control. And I actually did that. I shifted the dialogue between us, and both of our experiences was way more positive. At the end of our trip, I felt like a much better parent than I would have if I was just focusing on all the times that she was touching everything and couldn't keep her hands to herself, because at that time I think she was only 4, and what was I expecting? But it's just reframing your perspective and the lens that you're looking through to really be able to appreciate the efforts that your kids are putting out there. So instead of looking at all the times that they're not following your direction, what are they doing, and building on that, and then also setting up those expectations in a positive way. Behaviorally specific praise tied with character traits is just good practice, again, in developing that parent-child relationship. So that is, instead of just saying, oh, good job, oh, wow, that's so nice, we get more specific with that. You cleaned your room and I only had to ask you one time. That is respectful and responsible. And tying it with character traits is great, because again, you're developing that sense of ownership of and developing that intrinsic motivation. So this is always a concern in the school setting, because a lot of kids tend to be motivated, or we tend to go to tangible rewards, or rewards that we can give to kids. So that would be like giving them a candy for something. And a lot of the times teachers are like, well, we can't just give them candy and goldfish forever. We want them to do this because it's the right thing. And that's nice to say, but how do we actually get a kid to make the right choice because it's the right choice? And this is one of the ways that we do that. So behaviorally specific praise, what is it specifically that you appreciate them doing? And then tying that with specific character traits, because that develops that sense of ownership of, you know, I am a responsible person, I'm a respectful person, I'm a kind, thoughtful person, I have patience, right? So the more that we're positively affirming those character traits in our kids, the more that they're going to operate within those gifts. And
Jade, can you give an example, say room cleaning, or, you know, picking up toys? What would that look like? Just a quick example. Of
cleaning up the room or putting toys away?
Yeah, that's a big struggle, I know, for me, and in the chat box we're talking about that. So how would you frame that?
Again, it all depends on the age of your kids. So one of the things to remember, and if you're not good at child development, just Google it. Say, what should I expect my 3-year-old to do as far as cleaning their room? Or what should I expect my 10-year-old to do? Because it's different. Their ability to, and it's different within kids too. So for example, I was really good at being able to look at a messy room and prioritize, okay, if I take care of my dirty clothes first, then I can put my toys away, and then I can organize this, my room will be clean. My sister, on the other hand, did not know where to start. So know your child, and then also know your the development of your kid. So I would say just typically you can follow these same principles here. So saying usually transitioning is a time where you want to basically let the child know that a transition is about to happen. So we're about to go from a fun activity where you're playing with your toys to having to clean up. That's not so fun. So I'm going to give you a warning. And I say in a few minutes, we're going to be cleaning up. And then I always get confirmation that my kids heard that. Okay, so I'll say, you know, okay, Stella, and I want her to say, okay, Mom. And if she doesn't say, okay, Mom, I model that for her. And so I'll say, okay, Mom, and she'll go, okay, Mom. And so just making sure that you and your child are on the same page about what those expectations are is really helpful before you even get in the situation. So then I would say the pre-correction part of that would be looking at where is the mistakes that normally happen with your kid. Is it that they get distracted? Is it that they get frustrated and shut down? Is it that they refuse and say, no, I'm not doing it? What are some of those behaviors that tend to happen that get in the way of them completing that? And then try to pre-correct that verbally or even practicing that together. And then a lot of it, and we'll kind of go into this in a couple slides, I think, but it's looking at, oh, I lost my train of thought because I was thinking of the next slides. So in that situation, making it so that they almost have to be successful. So if they are not able to think strategically about how to organize that room process, you can say, the first thing I want you to do is put your cars away. Right? And then if they are still not doing it, you might even take their hand and help guide that hand into the toy box and say, there you go, that's how we do it. Let me see you do one. Great, you do one, I do one. And so depending on how challenging the behavior is, whether it's picking up toys or whether it's eating dinner or getting ready for bed, you want to kind of intervene to make the child successful if possible, rather than having them fail because you said, I want you to clean your room, and then you left to go get something done, because I know that that's easy to happen. But maybe you stay with them and you guide them through that process and reinforce them along the way. So that's kind of what I would say about that, that kind of situation. Is there a more specific question about that, Jenny?
No, you got it. I like the fact that we need to stay there sometimes and just spend that extra few minutes help guiding. That was very good. Thank you, Jade.
Yeah. So yeah, and then responding with feedback immediately after the behavior. So this is like, I'm gonna get into some like more meaty behavior stuff, because that's the other part of my job, is I'm a behavior analyst. So I have a certification in being able to break apart the why behind behavior, and then using that why to be able to make changes to that behavior. And so one of the things that we know about behavior is that whatever happens right after is, like if I'm reinforcing a behavior right once it happens, it's more likely to happen again. So whether that's good or bad behavior that we're reinforcing, that's still a behavior principle. So if we want to see a behavior happening again because we liked it, we want to immediately acknowledge that behavior. So especially the younger the kid is, the more immediate that feedback needs to be able to shape that behavior. So we don't want to wait until the end of the day or the end of the week or anything like that. We want to right then and there say, you know, hi, I like how you had patience when mommy told you to wait to finish up my phone call. All right, we want to jump on it right then and there. So this is another graphic I really liked, talking about kind of how do we shift our language to be able to communicate in a more respectful, supportive way. So instead of be quiet, can you use a softer voice? What a mess. Instead, we can say, it looks like you had fun. How can we clean this up? Do you need help? Instead, I'm here to help if you need me. So rather than putting it in their hands to discern that, we're saying, you can always ask me for help. I explained how to do this yesterday. Maybe I can show you another way. Do I need to separate you? Could you use a break? So you can go ahead and look through these things, but this is just so valuable. This is gold, because just how you say your message can, especially if you are dealing with compliance, and I know as parents, that's a huge thing, is getting our kids to listen to what we say. How we say it And does our child feel like we're setting them up for success or not? Do they feel like we're there for them if they fail is really important. And so sometimes thinking about how we're saying it can make all the difference. So a few more tips is giving options for appropriate behavior. So sometimes we'll say, okay, you need to apologize, but maybe our kids don't know how to navigate that. So it could be, okay, it's time, you ripped up their paper, and so we're going to need to apologize. Do you want to say, you can say, I'm sorry, or you can say, please forgive me for ripping your paper. So kind of giving options and choice, that lets them choose a path that fits them, that feels comfortable for them, and that maybe suits their personality more, but also is giving them that skill set, because we're not going to assume that they should know how to do that. How to handle emotions. So you're obviously very upset. It's not okay to throw your toys because you're upset. You can take a break, or we can talk about it. What do you need? And so it's giving them those options for how to handle that appropriately, rather than just saying, you need to get your attitude in check. Well, how do I do that? What does that look like? How do I know I've done that successfully as a child? How to share preferences, right? So, okay, you guys are having, or I know some kids get stuck on like, I want the green cup, or they have like a certain thing that like they want, or they want to wear a certain dress, or they want to be able to open the car door first, right? So instead we can give them options or choices in that. Okay, your sister's going to be opening the car right now. Would you like to open it when we get home, or would you like to close the garage door instead? So we're giving them options. We're not giving in to what they want and just kind of acquiescing to every demand, because that's not helpful for us in the long run. So how do I help you cope with the fact that you're not getting what you want? And then how to make the right choice as opposed to a consequence. So I even did this, I think probably 3 times with my son today, because he's going through a thing where it was, you can either give that back to your sister, or you can have a timeout. Which are you going to choose? Or, when he needed to go upstairs to take a nap, I said, do you need me to carry you, or can you walk up the stairs yourself? So it's basically, we're going upstairs. That's not the question, but I am going to empower you to make the choice of how that happens. Are we going to do it the easy way, or are we going to do it the hard way? But giving those options and really setting them up for, this is the way that you do that. Or if I'm upset, you can tell me, Mom, I'm frustrated, or you can say, I need a break. Those are the appropriate ways to handle your frustration. The next is respecting your children and their development. So this kind of ties into what I was saying before, but just making sure that where are they at? One of the things that drives me crazy, honestly, is endless questions. I have to remind myself all the time, this is developmentally appropriate. It is a sign of a healthy brain that my child is asking questions about everything. And so just honoring the stage of development that they're in. And if you don't know what to expect, again, look it up. There's really helpful even infographics that will help you easily dissect kind of where your child should be. But respecting their perspective, respect their emotions. So answer their questions, make time for them. And if you can't make time for them right then and there, because you are, on a work call, or you need to, finish doing laundry before something happens, let them know when you will be able to attend to them, but then follow through. And then always making sure you're acknowledging their feelings and their experience, rather than belittling that or minimizing that. Like, it's not even that big of a deal. It's just a toy. Isn't it helpful to a little kiddo that maybe feels like this is everything, or even to a teenager that's like, it's just a phone, right? No, it's kind of their whole life. So we want to make sure that we're acknowledging their feelings and their experience. And then this one tends to be for younger kids, but 1, 2, 3 magic is like, I pull it out all the time. It's great because it gives you and the child basically a clear pathway to making the right choice. It gives them 3 chances to be able to comply with what a directive is. And it really holds you and the child accountable and make sure that you're on the same page, rather than saying, if I have to tell you one more time, because then we forget. We start talking to our friend, or we start bagging our groceries. Oh my gosh, how many times do I have to tell you? And we don't know how many times it's been. And so that can get messy. And when we're trying to be consistent and set those limits, it's helpful for us to be on the same page. So 1, 2, 3 magic is just saying, If there's a behavior error, you say that's one. And you can even give a correction as far as, what do I want to see you do instead? So even today, Onyx was wanting to go out the other door, and I wanted him to come out a separate door. So I said, you need to come out this door. And he's like, but I already opened this one. I said, that's one. I need you to come over here. So I restated what my expectation was. I'm giving him a visual that is, he's had one chance already. And then he started coming over, but started playing with something on his way because he was pouting about having to comply. So I said, you need to move faster. That's 2. And then he came all the way over to me and I said, thank you so much for following my instruction. So 1, 2, 3 magic is just a nice verbal visual that goes along with how do I basically error correction in the process to make sure my kid's going to make the right choice. And this is something, if you're going to do this and you've never done it before, you want to teach the child. Obviously, they're not just going to know what that's 1, that's 2, that's 3 means. So you can say, I'm going to do something to help you and to help me know the right choice to make. And so I'm going to count to 3. I'm going to give you 3 different chances. But if I have to say 3, then you're going to have a consequence. Now, that's the part that's the trickiest about this is what is the consequence going to be? You don't always have to know. Sometimes it's obvious because it's, okay, now you've lost that snack or you've lost that toy. But sometimes you're going to have a consequence. Mommy needs to think about what that is. And so sometimes it's okay to allow yourself to not come up with something on the spot, but we always want to make sure that there is some type of consequence, whether that's a time away or whatever phrase you want to use for that break. But 1, 2, 3 magic is great. And like I said, I use it all the time because it gives my kids a chance to comply more on their own time. And it keeps us both on the same page.
Good tip. Jade, can I just ask the question in the chat box? It says, I have a preteen who continually gets irritated and upset. How do I respond to their continuous attitude?
Yeah, attitude. Well, first of all, that kind of goes along with development because developmentally, attitude is a natural part of just adolescence. And so a lot of that is coming back with teaching them what is appropriate. So acknowledging the feeling, it sounds like you're frustrated at me, or it sounds like you're annoyed, or I'm probably bugging you right now because I'm asking you to do something you don't want to do, and kind of waiting for like, is that right? Am I right? And once you have that, you can give them options. Again, I think that this works even when I've worked with teens as well, and saying, you can tell me that you can describe your feelings in this way, or you can do this, but it is not okay for you to talk to me in that way. And then we'll get into kind of, so the function of the behavior, and this is really, again, changing behavior that's challenging. So we'll get into that a little bit more, but that's what I would say. I would say 1 is making sure that your relationship, that you're putting as much effort into connecting with your teenager, because teens tend to feel misunderstood. And also, this is a very frustrating truth about teenagers, is that they actually misinterpret about 75% of social cues from others. Let me say that again. Teenagers misinterpret 75% of social cues from others. So if you're saying, hey, can you take out the trash? They're going to be like, oh, they're attacking me. They're ruining my life, right? Or even if they're texting their friends, that's why they're getting a lot of drama. Oh my gosh, I can't believe she just said that. She totally doesn't like me. When you might read the text as a parent and say, that is not how I'm interpreting that at all. So they're actually misreading and mislabeling social interaction. So that relationship and having dialogue, ongoing dialogue, is really important, because the stronger your rapport in your relationship, the easier it is to navigate some of those situations by either using humor or just trying to be like, hey, you know what, that kind of hurt my feelings. You know, what's going on? Is there something going on today? Or, you know, something like that. So that's probably on the surface level how I would address that. So I'm just going to kind of go through changing behavior. This is the last little part of this, because I want you guys to be able to ask questions as well. So understanding behavior is just knowing that there's a function or a reason why behind why we do the things that we do. And so it usually gets broken down into two categories. Either we want something or someone, or we don't want something or someone. So either we want to get something or we want to get out of something or to escape something. So once we know the why behind behavior of our kids, then usually that helps us find the most effective way to respond. So if I know that my kid is doing things because they just want attention, then I might think about, okay, how can I give them attention for doing the right thing and maybe not give them so much attention when they're doing the wrong thing. And that might look like this, where I saw a parent that was trying to shop, do like some retail shopping, and her child was in the stroller, and as the mom's looking and perusing, the child would scream at the top of her lungs. I mean, you could hear it all over the store. And the parent would give the kid attention, stop what she was doing. You need to stop that right now. And then she would go back to shopping and the kid would be quiet, but the mom didn't acknowledge that at all. So if the kid's motivated by attention and she knows that if I scream, I get mom's attention, then she's likely going to continue doing that, because again, whatever you reinforce, the behavior that that happened right before is the thing that's going to be likely to happen again. So that's what happened. It played out that way again. So the mom was shopping and the kid waited maybe a minute and then screamed out. And then what did mom do? Stopped everything that she was doing and gave her all of her attention again. And so if we understand why our kids are engaging in that behavior, then we can change what we do before the behavior occurs to prevent it from happening. So for example, with that mom, she could have, said, oh, thank you so much for being quiet, right? Are you doing such a good job being quiet? Thank you for having good behavior in the store. I know this is hard for you, right? To prevent her need for attention-seeking behavior, because she's giving her plenty of attention before the behavior occurs. Or we can change what we do after the behavior occurs so that we don't accidentally reward a behavior that we don't like, and we can teach what we see instead. So in that case, it would probably be taking the child out of the store and really controlling the way that we give them attention and saying that is not the right way to get mommy's attention, and the store expects you to do this. Okay, if you want mommy's attention, you can say, excuse me, mommy, and you're giving them an appropriate replacement behavior for that. Same thing. So if they're wanting to get out of chores, how can we give them an out in a more appropriate way? So like my teenager that doesn't want to clean their room. Okay, you're going to need to clean your room today. You can choose whether you do it before or after, right? So that way we're giving them an escape option of like, okay, I don't have to do it right now. I can finish my show, or I can finish texting my friends, and I can choose then to do it at a later time. So just thinking creatively about what can I do differently to prevent this behavior from happening, or to make sure that I'm not reinforcing the wrong type of behavior, and because we're understanding it through a function lens of like, oh, there's a reason for this. It's not, and the reason isn't just because my kid hates me or they're punishing me. It's usually not personal. And so even if it feels really personal, thinking about it functionally and causing yourself to stop as the adult and saying, okay, let me think about this functionally. Is my kid trying to get something or get out of something? And then using that knowledge to make a more logical choice can help you from going into that emotional place where you feel personally attacked. So looking at the behavior through a functional lens helps us think logically, not emotionally. And then when the misbehavior continues to occur, we can ask ourselves questions like this. And these are kind of key questions that are super helpful. So did I explain the expectation well, right? So if my kid continues to give me attitude, have I really given them stated what the expectation is for what our parent-child interaction is? Did I set my child up for success? So did I front load and pre-correct? So did I, if I told my kid to clean their room and they still haven't cleaned it and it's been an hour, did I set my child up for success? What could I have done to make them more successful? Maybe I could have broken down the steps. Maybe I could have offered to help them. Maybe I could have given them choices instead. And then do I need to teach them any other skills to help them meet this expectation? So do I need to teach them how to appropriately ask for something? Do I need to teach them how to use a particular phrase that may be better at getting their needs met or expressing their emotions than an eye roll or a no? And that's kind of what, at a 3-year-old level, I'm working with Onyx right now, because he has been very emotional. And even today he was like, stop. I think you said that to me like 3 times. So I said, oh, that's not how we talk to mom. You can say, I'm feeling frustrated right now, or you can say, please stop. And I don't let him off until he has appropriately modeled that behavior for me and demonstrated that he can do it. So we sometimes practice and rehearse over and over again until he can say calmly and respectfully, please stop, mom, or I'm feeling frustrated, mom, because saying, please stop, mom, doesn't count either. So we, that's kind of as the next few steps, but provide opportunities to practice and to reinforce those alternative behaviors. So if there is something that's kind of an ongoing struggle, find time to practice that and be intentional about it. How can we make you successful in here and make sure that you've got those skills and that you are seeing that I am your ally in helping you be able to accomplish this the right way. Model the behavior and the thought process you want your kids to demonstrate. So a lot of the things that our kids feel and a lot of the things that they do are the things that we feel and the things that we wish we could do, but we're grown up, and for the most part we've learned how to cope with some of those feelings and handle them in a more socially appropriate way. Well, our kids aren't. So find those opportunities where you are frustrated, where you are mad you didn't get your way, where you had to share something that you didn't want to, and model that behavior and that appropriate thought process with your kids so that they know how to navigate some of those thoughts. And then consider there are more intensive strategies like token boards, visual support. So like if you have a kid that really needs a lot of structure, maybe it's good for you and the child, especially if they're on the younger end, or even if they have learning disabilities or developmental delays, making sure that there's a visual schedule of the day that they can actually check off, or that has pictures to represent the sequence of the day. Consequence maps are kind of pictures drawn out. You can also use sentences depending on, again, your developmental level of your kid. But if I throw my toys, or if I don't clean up when I'm asked, then this is going to be the consequence. And we have that already written out. This is really helpful for parents because you're not having to think on the spot every single time what your consequence is going to be. It's just, if this behavior pathway happens in the negative, this is the negative outcome. But if I follow directions, if I clean up my toys, then this positive outcome happens. And it could just be, mom's happy, or I get to pick out a snack, any snack I want, or I get to keep my toys are available for the next time I get to play. Whereas, if I don't put them away, then I lose those toys that I was playing with. So it helps you because you can kind of think about it beforehand and kind of write out the consequence. I even did this with Stella when she was being potty trained. I said, if she woke up with, because she was banging on her door, that's what it was, in like the middle of the night, 2 o'clock in the morning, she'd bang on her door, and we would need to get out and, help her use the bathroom. And so it was, okay, if I knock quietly for mom and dad to help me, then this is the outcome. But if I bang on my door, this is the consequence for that. And so we had that written out almost like in a story form, and she would ask to read it every single night. We would read it before bed. And actually just recently she was like, do you remember that story we would read about me banging on the door? Can I read it again? So it just helps with that rehearsal of like, these are the behavior pathways and this is what happens if. Emotional regulation thermometers are great, just visuals to use. If you have a kid that doesn't know how to check in with their emotions, it's a good visual support to go along with that conversation. Social narratives are just kind of like stories that go along with the situation. This is usually good for younger kids. And so this could be something like, when I go to my friend's house, I may want to play with a toy. My friend might say, I don't want you to play with that toy. I might feel upset and not want to play anymore, but instead I will say, okay, and I will find something else to play with so that I can have fun with my friend. So it kind of goes through the scenario in more of a story format and helps them be able to navigate that so that and you read that story before you get in that situation and during calm moments to help them figure out what is a kind of a better way to handle that situation. So these are a couple examples of those token boards. So the I am working for, and then a Batman would be like you could put stickers on, it's almost like a sticker chart. The Batman, so you would cut it up into 4 pieces, and it's almost like for the different behaviors that the child demonstrated throughout the day. Like I cleaned up my room, I did my homework, I made my bed, I got myself ready for bed. Then once Batman, all the pieces of Batman have been earned and are in their right place, now we get some type of reward, like I get to watch a movie that night or something like that. And then the zones of regulation, literally Google this if you're interested in it, but it really puts emotions into different colors. So rather than labeling them good or bad, it's just red is like I'm an intense level of this emotion, whereas blue is I'm in a low level of this emotion, like I'm tired or sick. Green is good, yellow is escalating. And so on this visual, it gives you kind of work with the kid to outline, if I'm feeling yellow, what are some of the strategies that I can do in the yellow zone that help me calm down and get back to green? Same thing for red. What can I do in the red zone that helps me be able to calm down enough to get to yellow and then to green? So that's the main content. So I just want to say this first. Do not try to tackle all of these strategies at once. So if you're listening, you're like, oh my gosh, I need to do that. Oh my gosh, I need to do that. Just know that you're trying to change your own learned behavior as much as, or more than, you're changing kid behavior. So that doesn't happen easily or overnight. So what I would recommend is to pick one strategy that seems feasible for you and really commit to it. So if it is, I'm just going to try to make sure that I'm saying things in a positively stated way, then just start there and build a habit and a practice out of that before you go on and add to it. Because if you try to do all of this, you're going to continue to feel unsuccessful. It's too much, to take all of these things at once and try to implement them overnight. Or you can pick one behavior that you want to address from your child and put intentional effort into that. So you might say, okay, like the one thing that drives me crazy is this disrespect or this defiance. So what are some of the strategies that she talked about that I felt like I could successfully implement, and start there? It does take time, so I would say pick one or two strategies, really do it consistently, and really monitor how consistent you're being with that for a couple weeks before you say it's not working, right? So there's this little thing in behavior language called an extinction burst that means that behavior gets worse before it gets better. So if the kid's used to getting your attention by screaming at you, and you're no longer giving them attention for that, they're likely going to scream louder and scream louder to be like, what's going on? The system always worked for me. Why isn't it not working now? So just know that sometimes the behavior may get worse. That's actually a good sign. So usually 2 weeks is kind of when you can start seeing that positive trend shifting. Spoiler, you are not going to be the perfect parent. Your kid is not going to be the perfect kid. There's no overnight magic that's going to make this parenting thing easy. So even I was over at Whitney's house last night. She was watching my kids. And as I'm picking Onyx up to go home, he screams bloody murder, won't stop screaming, won't talk to me when I tell him that he can, express his feelings a different way. I think he threw a toy on the ground because he was mad about it. So even if you are doing all the things, your kid may still be their age, or still may be, have a difficult day or a difficult season. It doesn't mean that you're not doing the right thing. So just know that there's not just some magic thing that happens where you're a perfect parent and then your kid never misbehaves ever again. It takes dedication, this takes commitment, it takes consistent effort over and over and over again. There will always be more that you cannot control than what you can, which means that I can only control myself. My child, I have to get beyond thinking of them as a representation of me as a person and allow them to be their own human being that makes their own choices. So adjust your perspective. They are not a reflection of your failures when they make mistakes. And so just kind of giving yourself grace in some of those moments, especially those public moments where your kid's running away from you and not listening to you, or when they are causing a scene in the grocery store or in Target. Just know that that's real parenting right there. And then this last one is the most important. Remember that God is there to fill in any gaps that you have. So he's the only and true perfect parent. So anytime that you feel lacking, even in patience or in your perspective, in your ability to be, to develop a relationship, pray over those areas and ask God to step in, because he wants your relationship with your child to be successful and to be something that thrives. And so he is going to step into that. And very likely, if you say, God, make my child more respectful, he's probably going to work on your heart first. So just be prepared for that, that God is likely going to be calling you to go through that journey. And then I think the outpour of your faithfulness and your dedication as a parent in prayer is that your child comes along because you're working on your own heart and your own self.